and our guest. It's Wednesday, February 1st. Starting February off awful nice at below zero. Very encouraging. So this morning, we're fortunate to have representatives from our congressional delegation with us, and they can meet us and we can meet them, and it's always been a pleasure working with our federal delegation over the years, and well, we got a different, we got a little different crew, but in different spots. So it's great to have you folks with us this morning, and we'll start off this morning by introducing ourselves, and then we'll have you folks introduce yourselves and go from there. So
Brian Collmore, representing the Rutland District.
Irene Runner, Chittenden North, including Fairfax.
Brian Campion, Bennington County, Wilmington.
I'm Rich Westman Lamp.
and Bobby Starr up in Orleans County, and 4 towns in Caledonia County. So, so welcome, and I don't know if there's any particular order that we'll run in, but I would expect we'll start with Will, representing our most senior senator in Washington. And it's just a give and take type meeting, or a committee meeting, to get to put a face with the names, and so Will, I don't know if you want to sit
Sure.
right up to the table
As well. Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morning and welcome.
Well, thank you. It was 5 when I left this morning, and -5 in Moncton, and it got a little bit warmer in Montpelier, so quite the ride.
It's heating up.
Yeah, we're hopeful. It'll cross the 20-degree mark by noon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Will Stevens. I'm an outreach representative for Senator Sanders. I've been with the senator for about just over a year now. And as outreach representative, I cover agriculture, forestry, small business, economic development, workforce development, hunger and nutrition issues, and now pensions as well. So I'll get into that in a second. As I said, I live in Shoreham. My wife and I ran a commercial organic vegetable farm for 40 years. And we're now in the process of transitioning that over to our daughter. And she took it on last year for her first year, which freed me up to do something different. And that's essentially how I landed in this job with the senator. I was also, for those who don't know, I was also in the legislature from 2007 to 2014, representing the towns of Shoreham, Orwell, Whiting, and Benson.
You've been around that long? Holy mackerel.
Time flies.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
So there are days I miss it.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. So I guess the big news from our office is that the senator has moved from chairing the budget committee to chairing the health, education, labor, and pensions committee, which he's very excited about. And he, after they were sworn in at the beginning of January, they then went on recess, and so they've only been back in session for a couple of weeks. So they're really just kind of getting the chairs moved around and organized and so forth. And now they're getting down to business. As you can imagine, he's looking forward to fighting big pharma, advocating for minimum wage, and better access to primary health care, and many other things, using that chairmanship of that committee to advocate for many of his causes. What does the Health Committee do? Health, it oversees the Department of Health and Human Services, the FDA, and all those related things. Education, jurisdiction over issues related to education, workforce development, things like that. Labor, most federal labor and employment laws, and pension, private retirement plans, and railroad retirement, and other types of things. And I ended up covering pension because there was no one else on the outreach team that was going to do it. And so because we have exposure on the health committee, we needed a pension person on the outreach. And the way Senator Sanders organizes his office is he has a 6-person outreach team. And our job is to be his eyes and ears in the community and the issue areas that we cover. He also has a casework team, which is separate from that. So the outreach team does a little bit of casework, very little bit, but mostly we're meant to be going around the state, listening and talking to Vermonters to see what's important. So he also, Senator Sanders also continues to serve on the budget, Veterans Affairs, Energy and Natural Resources, and the Environment and Public Works Committees. He's been on those right along, continues there. He'll continue to work in support of Vermont's family farms, diversified agriculture, and access to nutritious food for all Vermonters, of course. And climate change, as many of you know, he's called an existential threat. So he's looking for ways to address that as well. The Farm Bill's coming up. I'll defer to Ryan on some of that. We, in our shop, have begun, we did a couple listening sessions last November to start kind of kicking off our efforts in terms of bringing the center up to speed of issues of importance in the 12 titles of the Farm Bill. And also I want to mention 2 things. One, CDSs or earmarks. We're not sure if they're going to be back for fiscal year 24. We're still waiting for that. I do want to mention a couple of earmark projects that our office is involved with that are relevant to this committee. One is an agroforestry project that Megan Giroux from the Interlaced Commons is working on with a number of farms around the state to implement agroforestry practices on farms. And another one is for the fiscal year 23, has to do with the Center for Ag Economy Farm Connects program, their distribution delivery system that helps integrate food hubs and farms and markets. So, we support that with a CDS, and John Ramsey up there is doing great work.
We had John in last week, and I'm telling you, it's quite a combination of many things that they do.
Absolutely.
From distributing to picking up, to packaging and processing. I mean, it's really wild.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be profitable. I mean, it's in about a year's time, I think he told us. And so this earmark is going to help him on that path. Another thing I want to bring up, and again, we can talk about it more later, but I just want to kind of get it on the table, is we were invited down to a USDA event sponsored by Senator Welch down at the Course Farm the other day to talk about the USDA's rollout of the strengthening organic enforcement rule and the organic dairy marketing program to help organic dairy farmers. In the lead up to that, last year, I was in touch with probably about a quarter of Vermont's organic dairies to hear their stories and to find out what their ask might be if we had the opportunity, let's say, to come up with some emergency relief funds in the last year's omnibus bill. And that didn't happen. But what the number I heard was between $6 and $8 a hundred to be made whole for 2022. Was what they were looking for. Depended on the operation, the debt load and practices and management and all that stuff. But the average seemed to be about $6 to $8 per hundredweight. They were that much shy of needing to break even. So again, I don't want to steal Ryan's thunder, but the organic dairy proposal that came through the USDA through the CCC is coming up with about 100 million to address that, which by my back the envelope calculations comes out to, in the best case scenario, maybe $2 a hundred.
Nationwide for the organic.
Under 5 million pounds for the organic dairy.
So it did get capped out then.
Yeah.
Yeah, was there any talk about fixing the issue of why they're running so far behind on per hundredweight basis and trying to resolve that problem?
Not addressed through this proposal, but it's definitely on our screen. And I'm happy to talk about that, but I also want to give equal time to other, and maybe we could all
Yeah,
be part of that.
yeah, we can
Appropriate,
do a round room
Sure.
discussion.
Yeah, but I'd love to pick that conversation up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Any questions for Will? Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ryan?
Hello, Senator. How are you? Good, good. Doing great. For the record, I'm Ryan McLaren. I'm a senior advisor to now Senator Welch. And I've been doing the ag portfolio for the whole time I've been with him. So better part of 8 years. I'm the old guy in the bunch, I guess, at this point, now that Tom Barry's moved on. Hi, Tom. Anyway, so Peter sworn in as our junior senator January 3rd, and we've sort of hit the ground running. We finally got our committee assignments last week. Peter will be appointed to the Agriculture Committee, which is a really, he's really excited about. I'm really excited about, selfishly. Get to do a lot of good work with Vermont farmers still. And he'll also be on the Commerce Committee, which has a lot of jurisdiction over, has a wide-ranging jurisdiction over intellectual property, a lot of transportation issues. He'll be on the Judiciary Committee, and he'll be on the Rules Committee. So I think agriculture is probably chief among the interests for you all. And as Will suggested, we have a Farm Bill reauthorization that's coming up this year. 12 titles of the Farm Bill that cover many, many, many things. And I'm sort of happy to go into those in more detail if that's useful for you all. If not, then stop me. But the biggest chunk of money in the Farm Bill is the nutrition program, so SNAP benefits. Something that obviously, as the pandemic winds down, is a topic of conversation here. We have wonderful service providers in Vermont that are doing excellent work on making sure people don't go hungry. And we partner closely with them to make sure that what works in Vermont is allowable, essentially, through these federal programs that can be somewhat inflexible. So we'll hopefully be able to do some good work there. The commodities program, Title I is commodities, dairy, essentially, and for Vermonters, dairy is the big one, but it also covers soy, rice, peanuts.
Any discussion on universal meals for schools?
Senator Leahy, or Senator Sanders, excuse me, is lead sponsor of a universal school meals bill. Peter was a co-sponsor in the House. I don't know if there's one, if it's been re-up this Congress, but I'm sure it will be, and so there will be a discussion about it.
We'll talk about that then in general.
Yeah. Conservation through NRCS will be another deep conversation, and one of Peter's priorities. How do we use the Farm Bill and our farmers, who are stewards of land, to address climate change and to ensure that farmers are rewarded for the good work that they do to preserve our climate and preserve our land, preserve the soil. Trade is Title III. It's another important title, particularly for our dairy industry, where a good proportion of what we are producing, the milk we're producing, is getting exported. Nutrition, I mentioned. Credit, so the farm credit programs is Title V. Title VI is rural development. So USDA Rural Development is an important partner for us and a lot of communities across the state in terms of grant funding or low interest loans. They also have low interest housing mortgages in rural communities. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Actually, the new school in Winooski was funded in large part through USDA Rural Development. And they took good advantage of those programs. Research and extension, so UVM Extension is funded through Title VII. And they do incredible work. I'm sure you will hear from them over and over again. But, you know, are constantly in need of support for the research that they're doing. And a lot of the more innovative things that are happening in Vermont agriculture are a result of like research projects that Heather Darby's doing, or they just provide a like bottomless resource for Vermont farmers.
We had the director of the extension service in
Yeah,
a week or two ago, and it seems like they're right on top of things.
they really are.
Their research and outreach and a lot with Maple,
Yep.
so they're doing well.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, the Maple Research Center is funded through extension, but it's also funded through, I think, horticulture grants through the Acer Access Grant Program. So a lot of federal funding has gone into supporting that program. It's kind of unique and one of a kind in the United States.
The only one we had problems with is the Morgan Horse Farm.
Mhm.
And, you know, we're trying to double their appropriations from the state from $1 to $2. But it was, I mean, gave a good report on, you know, what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they run with federal money or just money from the university. We give them very, very, no, none really. We just keep that line open.
Right. I'm not sure exactly how much federal funding they would get. Title VIII is forestry. So obviously an important industry here in Vermont. 9 is energy, which encourages the development of farm community and renewable energy. Horticulture, I mentioned, that's where all the organic programs are housed, especially crop block grants, which are sort of small niche producers have used. Things like saffron, we have a saffron conference, and a lot of that industry is supported that way. Title 11 is crop insurance. And then there's a miscellaneous Title 12. So that's just the big picture overview. It's a giant omnibus package, theoretically reauthorized every 5 years. And Peter's excited to be able to dig in, you know, the way Senator Leahy was able to. No one can replace Senator Leahy, but it's great for Vermont farmers that we have a voice on that committee, I think. So his big priorities for the Farm Bill are going to be dairy. We've had some success in the conventional market, both in they're getting a good price at this moment, and the dairy margin coverage program, the margin, you know, insurance program that USDA created in the 2018 Farm Bill. We worked out the tweaks to a certain degree, and it seems to be functioning relatively well for folks. There are more tweaks to be made, but it feels like the industry is not interested in scrapping the entire program, which is great. There was a time when it went by a different name that it was thought to be hopelessly useless essentially. And we've done a lot of good work to make sure that the margins are right and the price, like what the price point for the insurance is right, that it actually makes a difference for farmers.
We, as you know, I would presume that we last year, we picked up the insurance premium for our local guys.
Mhm.
And we're working on doing the same thing this year. The big issue with the DMC program, and it works great.
Yeah.
But the issue is that we've got that 139 farms organic that aren't in,
Right.
really in the mix.
Right.
And that's why, they're losing so much money. But we did, a few $1 million even this last year came into the state, but the year before that, I think it was $55-60 million that was paid to our farmers. So
Yeah.
it really, made the difference where they could keep going or come down here and try to get money out of us.
Right.
So it works good as a national.
Right.
program.
Yeah, I think folks would prefer not to need it, We'd rather be in a
Well, yeah.
situation they are now, or the margin on their milk is good enough where they're making money and they can support themselves and the
Yeah.
business. But yeah, last year's a good example. I mean, when we needed it, it actually
Work.
helped. And so, but to your point about organic, that's number 2 priority. And this is not in any particular order, but the second one I want to touch on is the organic program.
Yeah.
Peterson will have his first ag committee hearing today, and Secretary Moffett, who came up to the Course Farm last Friday, will be testifying. And this is a conversation they had last week. It's something he's planning on asking her about today, just to keep pressing on the fact that we don't have a insurance program for organic dairy. We've never really needed one. And we're in a sort of unprecedented time when the market conditions that have impacted conventional for so long is hitting the organic market. So it's something we'll keep having a conversation about and pushing on, and as we move forward for the Farm Bill. And then the other part of organics is just like program integrity. The organic program was started by Senator Leahy. It was in Vermont. Organic farmers, is sort of the backbone of what that program became. When people buy organic products in the supermarket, they see the Course Farm. That's what they envision, and the market isn't that anymore. And so it's there's been a lot of damage to the brand of organic and to the usefulness of the certification through the lax program integrity, frankly, from the National Organic Program. So Peter's been doing this for a long time, but ensuring that when people that buy an organic product, the image they have in their head matches reality, that it's a farm that is family run, stewards of the land, and isn't just there to make a buck. And that's something, they're trading off the backs of Vermont organic farmers that built the program and created that entire brand. So the brand integrity of organic is important. And so we'll keep working with Secretary Moffett and on these new enforcement rules. It's the biggest overhaul ever. Yeah, to make sure that they do hold people accountable, but don't make it so burdensome that a small mixed vegetable farm in Vermont can't meet their requirements. It's just a bureaucratic burden. So there's a balancing act there, but
I think Peter will, do well on the ag committee. Way back, he helped when he was here in the Senate. He made quite a few trips with me to the dairy compact.
yeah,
And so he certainly understands the issue.
right.
And the problems. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah.
Back in the dairy compact days.
Right.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Regenerative soils, is that coming up at all? I know this committee's talked a little bit about regenerative soils over the years and,
last year.
yes, sequestering carbon,
Yeah.
huge opportunities there. I know you touched on it a little bit early on, just
Yeah.
how do we reward farmers in part
Yeah.
for doing this good work?
Yeah.
Is there a bill or anything that's happening?
Well, the Farm Bill will be a huge vehicle. I mean, so much of what we can pay, we give out ton of money through NRCS for promoting specific practices.
Okay,
And so that you both are sort of like keep leading me into my next point. But climate change is using the Farm Bill to address climate change through whether you call it payment for ecosystem services. I know there's a working group in Vermont that's happening right now, but it would be a huge missed opportunity to not help what our climate goals through the Farm Bill, because there's so much money going out the door to people doing the work on the ground. And so it'll be a puzzle to figure out how best to do that. And some of it might just be allowing some flexibility within like the conservation programs. NRCS does amazing work, and sometimes that work is like constrained by the sort of conventional thinking of USDA. And so allowing folks in Vermont to use those dollars to meet those goals is a different way of thinking than it has been in the past. It's been like purely runoff based or, so it's a different metric, but it's an important one for Peter as we build these programs.
In the Vermont, the required ag practice,
yeah,
that incorporates all these projects and programs that NRCS promotes. And, if you don't meet the required ag practices, it's because you aren't following what the NRCS is promoting and doing. And soil health, regenerative ag, and soil health is a big issue with them. And I don't think we've had NRCS in yet, but we will get them in once we get our bearings.
Because you can do it. Leon at the Course Farm hasn't plowed his field in 40 years.
Yeah, there's some guys down my way too,
yeah. And they're successful.
The field in back of my house, or the field that my house is built on, that hasn't been plowed in 50 years or more. And it wasn't because it needed plowing or it didn't need plowing, because if you turn a sod over there, you walk through once with the plow, you're 2 days picking the stone. So it's pretty important to keep that real healthy. Well, we put corn there once, and that was it was a busy summer.
And then I'll just wrap up quickly because I'm taking too much of your time. But the last two priorities that Peter's talked about are the nutrition programs that are essential to Vermonters, and essential, like I said, the most expensive portion of the entire Farm Bill, and the farm to school programs that Peter and Senator Leahy have worked hard on for a long time. And we've been really successful. Peter was up in at the St. Albans City School, and we had lunch there, and it is incredible the work they do, the meals they make. It's different than my old school lunch, and it's there's a lot more we can do to make food service providers' lives easier, and the connection between farmers and those institutions more seamless. There's a lot of rules. And that's all. So that's the Farm Bill and Peter's priorities. I will caution, like last time we did this, it became, instead of a 5-year Farm Bill, it became a 7.5-year Farm Bill. Okay, we reauthorized it like short term a few times, and that's very possible. So none of these things are like necessarily overnight. Maybe, you never know. We might lightning might strike and we can get something done by the deadline of this Farm Bill, but there's plenty of possibilities for these changes to come into effect a year, 2 years down the line as we work to put this new Congress together and actually get the work done. So it's really a TBD on the timeline. we'll have to do something this year, whether it's just reauthorizing what we're doing now until we find until we write a different bill. I don't know.
Does that look like we could be getting a new bill or?
I don't know the answer to that. That's kind of, it's like,
you'll want-
it's too soon to tell, I guess. I'll have a better feeling for it, and
Yeah,
Peter will,
sure,
as we
sure.
start getting into the work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there other New England senators on the Ag Committee?
That's a really good question. I'll have to go back and look. It's new to me as well, so I'm not sure. I don't think so. At least there weren't, and which is why, half the reason why, not,
Is
Jill
it,
Brand,
Jill
Brand,
Brand?
Booker, and Fetterman.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so,
Yeah, she's good to work on.
yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. So,
Interesting.
Dave? Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good to be here. For the record, David Scherer, State Director for Representative Becca Mallon. And some of you have seen me around the building in other capacities in the past. As some of you know, I worked at the Attorney General's office for a number of years and was just at the Cannabis Control Board for a couple of years. And now I'm working for the Congresswoman, which has been great. Our office is very much still in startup mode. The U.S. House gave us working computers last week. So we're doing the best we can, but
Now it'll be all downhill.
yeah. You know, it's quite true. Being reachable is a challenge, but so that's a little bit about my background, and we are still getting up to speed. The folks who are, and to be perfectly transparent, as some of you know, agriculture is not my area of expertise, so I apologize that we weren't able to bring the folks here due to some conflicts, personal conflicts they had. So, but I did want to say a couple things, and the folks who I'm here with are far more expert than I am, so I want to leave most of the time for them to be able to talk with you. But a couple things to note, some of which I think is obvious, which is that, you know, the party is in a different position in the House than the U.S. House than it is in the U.S. Senate, and so the representative is really thinking about some of the areas where she's going to have to play defense on some key issues. And I think some of the things they've identified as being areas of concern for them, areas that are most likely to be attacked, if you will, are the nutrition benefits. It's the huge area of the bill. The SNAP benefits, they are expecting the attempts to cut those significantly in the House, and some of the rural development money they're also concerned about, although they're a little more hopeful that they're hopeful that they can defend both. But I'd say in the rural development money, it's a little easier to find alliances across the aisle because there's so many folks on the other side of the aisle who share some real strong interests in protecting that money. And the SNAP benefits tend to be a bit more of a political football. But those are two areas that the Congresswoman's office has identified as areas they're going to need to focus on, not because the other areas of the Farm Bill aren't important, but because they recognize the position they're in.
Yeah.
And we'll certainly work with the senators from Vermont. They, I think, will be much better positions to do really affirmative, forward-looking policy. And Congresswoman Ballon will be in a position to try to defend what they do in the House and play some defense on those other key areas.
Well, she's got years of catching up
Yeah,
to,
seniority wise, she's got
Ernie
yeah,
and Peter have been there a long time.
they really have.
And, people
We're
say,
confident she
well,
can do it.
we should have term limits and all that good stuff, but it kind of pays to have a little seniority at times. And
Certainly does.
but of course, Irene didn't work with Becca much, I guess maybe, but the rest of us worked a lot with Becca, and really good to get along with, and quick study, and just a all around good person. And that means quite a bit when you're dealing with, you're in the minority and you've got to deal with the majority to have an attitude like she has to make that all blend together.
I appreciate that, Senator. I think that's right. And I think she's already working to build some of those relationships and following the examples of our prior to Congress people who are represented here
Yeah.
as well. And how they were, exactly. And they found different ways to be effective. And she's studying a bit of their example too, and how she can figure out ways to be effective in the House. And I think you're exactly right. She's got a natural skill for building those relationships. She's already doing that.
Yeah, I know in the Senate, well, I have two minority members in here, but I always felt that you folks in the minority party were treated really no different than those of us in the majority party. And, you know, yeah, politics gets strange sometimes.
It's a good way to put
She
it.
and I came in together
down there.
as senators. As a matter of fact, you did too, Brian. We were the three new guys, gals that year. Yeah. And I think it's a testament to her personality that
True.
she rose very quickly here, and
Yeah.
it won't take her long.
Yeah.
So you know what he's saying, we expect.
I hear
Great.
I hear the subtext too. No, she's gonna work hard. I know that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Other questions or comments? Well, why don't we open it up to everyone, and we'll just have a little round the room discussion.
Can I pick up where Senator Campion kind of was leading with a can never pronounce the word. They need to come up with another
Good
term for
soil.
regenerative agriculture. Yeah. I was just at a meeting last night of the Champlain Valley Farmers Coalition down in Millbury. And Travis Thomason was there, the new state director for Soil Conservation Service, or excuse me, NRCS. And he mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act, which put a lot of money into conservation programs and different things, $20 billion and over 10 years. And he mentioned to the folks last night that what that means for Vermont is an annual increase from about 12 million a year to 32 to 42 million. He figured 20 to 30 additional $1 million are going to come to Vermont because of the IRA. So you can get them in here to tell yourself, but that's great. Those are notes that I made for NRC.
Yeah, that's great. And we, over the last maybe 4-6 years, we've worked on quite a lot on regenerative ag and trying to build, get our guys, our farmers to build better soils and if you do that, you use less commercial fertilizer, you retain the water in the soils, grow better crops. And I think, they're catching on. We're injecting a lot of fields with manure, injecting it right into the soils. And Red Shaffett, he's a big, large LFO up north. He was showing me his agronomist reports, and I think it was just about 50% reduction in commercial fertilizer on these fields that he's been working for the last 5 years with injections and getting his manure on at the right time. And no, it's working. And our big guys are all into that. And what we're doing is trying to help our districts own injectors, manure injectors, so they can let different farmers use the same piece of equipment. But of course, you run out of time that way, right? And so I don't know if they have a program that helps these water districts, like Champlain Valley, I think they may have do they have a manure injector? Or they talk about that?
Are you talking about the watershed coalition groups or the
Yeah.
conservation districts?
No, the conservation districts, I know some of them do have,
Yeah,
but I don't know about the watershed.
yeah, I'm not sure about the Champlain Valley folks, if they do or not, but they'd love to come up and tell you. So
Yeah.
I'm sure if you haven't heard from them yet.
'Cause it seems to be making a vast difference.
Mhm.
Okay, you've got to get onto your meals program.
That's right, that's right, that's right. Want me to say a word about that?
Yeah,
So Senator Starr, this committee and House and Senate Ed have been working on universal school meals. You may know we extended it 1 year last year. We've had a lot of testimony in this committee and in education around what a huge difference it's making. You're getting a couple of things happening. You're getting fewer kids going to the nurse's office because of belly aches because they haven't eaten, getting more community gatherings in the lunchroom, cafeterias every morning and afternoon. So socializing, things like that. Getting a lot more healthy foods. I mean, I think upwards to $1 million was spent on local farms because of this, and we hope that that's just going to continue to increase. I think I'm more than confident in 5 years we could see, schools in this state saying 80-90% of our food is locally sourced, and so our hope is to extend this going forward. It's not a huge ticket item, but it's a big ticket item. We're talking, roughly $20 million and then some. But as I think we're all hearing, the stigma is so tough in schools. I mean, we heard this I chair Senate Ed in the afternoon. Yesterday, it was just reinforced. And unless you go to universal meals, that stigma is not going to break down. I mean, the stories themselves, the stomach aches for one, the kids that when you don't, in some schools, we heard, I think what was said was in some schools, hopefully this isn't Vermont, but if you have meal debt, you don't get the same kind of meal as other kids. Tough chasing parents down, looking for money, heartbreaking. This is the United States of America. You get, and some of the argument is, well, and wealthier kids can pay, but we don't make wealthy kids pay for their history textbooks. We basically say, this is the school day. You're going to get your lab equipment free, your textbooks for free. You're going to come in, and we want to move toward, making this program permanent. And so I'm optimistic. One thing, Bobby has always taught us is, be able to count to 16. That's what we're going to carve on his tombstone. Although he'll probably outlive us all.
and you can do that with your fingers and toes too. So it shouldn't be that hard.
So, I'm optimistic we're going to be able to do this, but you should just, be aware that this is on our radar and it's really important. And we're hearing it's making, frankly, I think I've been shocked by what a big difference it's making in the schools when we have, people who are feeding kids every day talk to us. So, yeah.
What would really work well if the feds put through in the nutrition program, school nutrition, if they would put through a matching fund, so that if they couldn't do it all, which is, nationwide, that's very expensive, but it would be some type of a voluntary program that if your state wants to do a free universal meals, they pay half, and then get the state or even the local district to do half. But it's really important, and I don't think we're any different socially, our state, than most states. about feeding our children. They come to school hungry all over the country, not just in Vermont. And in the other issue, we talk about the environment well, as a society, we're better off to grow that food locally by profession, I was always a truck person. And, it's crazy to run a truck from the west coast to the east coast with a load of veggies on it, when we can grow them right here, know what we're growing, know what's being put into the soils, and so it doesn't make any sense to, just because they can mass produce it, to truck that stuff all the way across the country. And the truck's gotta go back home as well. And so I think, those two issues are big. And just last evening on the news, they were showing these wealthy people buying up thousands of acres of land out in the west. And you would think that they were maybe gonna farm. It isn't that they're gonna farm, they wanna keep that water that's assigned to that land to sell to developments that are gonna be built, so they have adequate water. Well, what's gonna happen to that land out west if that's really accurate? I mean, in a week or two ago, they showed farmland in the west with cracks in the soils that were 3-4 inches wide.
We get that in Madison County, Bob, in a normal summer.
Yeah. So, if we're going to secure our food availability, I think we're better off if we can do it at home here rather than relying on our friends from the Midwest and West Coast.
Yeah, so sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, it also gives all of our local farmers this level of predictability. You're gonna sell carrots to the elementary school, and it lets young farmers take a chance. They can open this, they can come, they can lease some land, they can buy some land, they can expand their farm. We can continue to increase that incentive to buy local.
Yeah, of course. So, you're not gonna get any argument from anybody here, you know that. And so, but yeah, just take a minute to speak to some of that. At the staff level, we've been working with Ellen Taylor, who's, well, and she's been working with the New England Feeding New England initiative to move this farm to plate effort beyond Vermont, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
And yeah, it should happen. And so, one of the things that we've been talking about, I don't know that it's going to happen, but one of the things that we've been talking about was maybe if she could kind of kick off a brown bag lunch series for New England delegation staffers in DC to raise awareness around what a resilient New England food system might look like in terms of economic development, workforce development, job opportunities, all of it, and production and so on. So don't know where it's going to go, but we're kind of scheming and working on that. We do recognize the value of a local, dynamic local food system. I mean, if COVID didn't teach us anything, it taught us that, the value of local, resilient food supplies.
Yeah.
So absolutely. And I know as we come up with our priorities for the Farm Bill, this is one piece that we'd love to make sure can happen if we can get some language, even if it's for the 28 Farm Bill, get some language in there to start moving that oil tanker, kind of in that kind of direction that, where nationally we could recognize that national food security looks like regional food security.
We've also talked with the Land Trust and with Gus at VHCB about taking farmland that comes up for sale and trying to figure out a way that you can maybe block that so that a young farmer hasn't got to buy a 400-acre farm they could maybe lease 20 acres of the fields to grow crops on, or 10, or start out with 5 maybe, and add to it. And so they can afford to get into the growing business, because, some can afford to buy larger plots, but many are restricted to a smaller plot. And,
Yeah, that's gonna be huge going forward, is access to land. And not just that, but also access to people who can profitably farm that land.
Yeah.
So there's a whole nother level of education that's gonna happen as the farming community ages out and they're not replaced by the place-based learners who happen to be their children. And it's gonna come from away somewhere. What does that look like? Is it happening in our CTEs? Is it happening in our universities? Where is that gonna happen? And so that's another piece of that.
yeah.
It's also a capacity issue.
Go ahead.
So the earmark that Senator Sanders got is like directly addressing that. So farmers who are making carrots need to be able to like process them and put them in a package that a farm can get and USDA will pay for. And so there's like an integration piece that it continues to like mature as we get further and further in the farm to school program. But we need more folks like the Center for the Ag Economy, more like processing hubs to like aggregate and allow these farmers the actual ability to like to do the sale. It's also true, and we've been growing the community eligibility program in the school meals for forever, and COVID hit and it went away. Everyone was in a community eligibility school, but there are schools, I think a number of schools in Vermont that reach a community eligibility threshold that can't actually do universal school meals because it's so burdensome to like track and find get all the information from parents.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of detail that's required by USDA to make sure a small school in rural Vermont can feed every one of its kids.
Yeah.
And it's those issues that the community eligibility stuff we can maybe keep expanding and trying to grow to sort of back into a universal school meal program. Or at least expand the pool of students that's eligible to, but it requires a lot of work with USDA to make sure that schools can actually that meet those standards can actually access that benefit.
Yeah.
See, the SNAP program, what we did hear about the universal meals is we asked schools to still do the income eligibility thing. If there was some way that that those people in, I'll use my town, Troy, if there's some way that Troy could get these SNAP participants number, it doesn't have to be John Jones but just a number that lives in Troy, they're on SNAP. Well, you could add up pretty quick the number of children that would qualify for free or reduced meals. And then the school would add that to their findings and get credit for that. Now, you have to send the paper to the individual, and they have to fill it out. And I mean, if they don't feed their children or have product to feed their children breakfast at home before they go to school, maybe they just aren't going to fill out the paper to send in as well. And I would think, I know confidentiality is a big issue, but if they could just send, the feds could just send a number, and so it would allow the community to get credit for those free or reduce lunches, it would help us a great deal. I don't know if I'm thinking way off base here.
No, I mean, that data is available. It's like
Oh,
there, it's like in the census data, it's in other government agencies. We relying on the school districts and parents to meet a threshold of community eligibility through like one piece of paperwork at a time seems absurd in now. And so
Yeah.
it is just preventing kids that should have access to universal meals access. In
Right.
schools, it's particularly a challenge in Troy. It's like, it's hard in Burlington, but they do it because they have the resources to do it.
Chase it.
Yeah, but in smaller schools and smaller communities, it's much harder and the resources are much thinner.
I don't see where a hot lunch program is gonna work any better, because they know that Mrs. So-and-so's child deserves free lunch, but if it was just a number, and so it's something to think about. Richie, you had your hand up. Irene?
So piggybacking off that, the IRS knows what most households are making, does it not? I mean, the
Yeah.
NSA has information about all of us. This information is there. It actually resides somewhere in Washington. Can we just be smart about merging that data and finding out which districts are deserving of how many reduced meals? It just seems like a no-brainer. I had 2 children and I wasn't working 2 jobs, and I don't know if I would have had the bandwidth to fill out a form if I needed to. I mean, this is not common sense to
Yeah.
expect, say, a single mom with 1 child even, who's trying to make ends meet, to be filling out a form like I just tracked down this weekend. It's just hard. It's really hard
Yeah,
to do that and get it in on time or whatever. Let's make it easier.
right.
We have the data.
100% on board, yes.
We'll call it the McLaren bill.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think I can speak for everybody here that we are very grateful and appreciative of the help from our federal partners to get to the breakfast and lunch situation. And you mentioned, Ryan, and I don't know, most of that appropriation probably didn't come from the farm bill. It probably was from the rescue plan money or some similar kind of relief situation. But you also mentioned that the farm bill, if it runs out of the field, so to speak, and the deadline, that it's probably going to just be re-upped. Is there any way to put an allocation, a line item in that for this program that we're talking about? Or does it strictly have to come from someplace else? It just seems like, I mean, everybody kind of thinks it's a great idea, but we can't figure a way to do it.
Yeah. The problem is once you open it, you kind of like open it. So there'll be a lot of reluctance to like
Yeah.
change a thing
Okay.
until they have the whole package. But doesn't mean we'll stop trying. Because I hear you. I mean, yeah.
Or Senator Starr's idea of some sort of matching situation could be worked out. It makes it easier to sell it here.
Yeah.
Sure. I'm sorry, Richie.
No, go ahead.
I'm all set.
I just have to say, with all of this, when we're talking about school lunch and school breakfast and all that, as the cutbacks come and the supplemental programs to things like 3 Squares and those people that are truly in need, are the supplemental programs for 3 Squares are going away.
Yeah.
So we're cutting back on food programs for the people that I consider truly needy. And as we do that, I hope you don't forget those and you don't just go after the new programs.
Yeah, absolutely. We will.
I just have to say that because the supplemental programs for 3 Squares are going away.
Right.
And this one? And it's gonna hit people in April.
Yeah, and it's gonna hit people in April and it's gonna hit the truly needy.
We had some of our hot lunch staff in, and they, like, at the end of the day, they have food left. They make too much or run out of this, but they've got this, and and they put that on a shelf. So kids, when they check out and want to go home, they can walk by the shelving area and pick different foods up, put in their knapsack to take home. And, because we were wondering, we asked the question, well, what do you do with food that's left over? And, that sounded like a pretty good idea. And of course, some of our smaller schools, you know, they have one person. Sometimes they might get lucky and have a person and a half or two. But up in the kingdom, a lot of the hot lunch programs are run by one or 1.5 people. And so they're, you know, they're working hard to not be overloaded with labor. And it's really amazing how the hot lunch agents, the school personnel, and school nurses, there's not one, we haven't had one complaint or ways to make it better. You know, they said that they're having problems getting the forms filled out, and so we gotta work more on helping them with that.
You've been hearing from the School Nutritionists Association, I'm guessing?
Pardon?
School Nutritionists Association folks?
Well, we had, what's her name?
Rosie.
Rosie.
Kruger.
Yeah.
And, you know, what a difference a year makes. Last year when we were getting this all put together, and the year before it was worse, but last year was still questionable about, well, I don't know if we can do it, and, you know, it's gonna be this hard, and it's gonna cost $40 million, and this year, it real positive attitude about the way it went, and how well it's working, and so it you know, it's a big shift in a positive, very positive way. Yeah. Other questions?
No.
No, you folks got any more questions for us?
Did you cover the organic piece? You asked me a question about organic dairies, and did we answer that to your satisfaction?
Well,
There is the dairy margin coverage, an organic dairy margin protection program would be nice, you know.
well,
because-
it needs to be a different, I mean, the same type of program, except for the feeds up here and the milks up here, so it'd be a different level.
Exactly,
And
yeah, that matches their need and their unique situation. Because their pay price hasn't changed for 6 or 8 years.
And you were at that meeting earlier about $6 to $8. Well, the other day, we had a hearing, the last Thursday morning. We had a hearing that lasted from maybe 10:30 on the organic stuff, 10:30 till 12:15 or something like that. And then we got off because we thought it was over. And we had other obligations. And then Thursday afternoon, late in the afternoon, I got a note that the House had voted a request out to approach for 9.2 million, which was equal to $5 a hundredweight for the entire 22 year. And I said, well, golly, you know, we should have heard this between 10:30 and 10 and noon, not after supper or during supper hour Thursday night, because, you know, there's a lot of ins and outs and planning and coordinating and because Rich and I both sat on appropriations over here. Well, we're going to get drilled with some serious questions. Well, what you guys in ag doing? Because we're all in the same bucket, yeah. And so, anything that could happen in DC to set that DMC program up a little different, to help those people when feed costs go right through the roof, and fertilizer, because they have to use organic fertilizer. It would help, I think, our 140 or so organic guys a great deal, and we certainly don't want to lose any of them. They keep our rural landscape open and pasture their animals, and people don't drive here to look at my friend's Red Shaffer's big row of barns and the cows in there. They can see them through the doors in the summer and they come to see animals out in the field, and the other thing we're bumping up against is, we've done diversification for many years. And a lot of farms are diversifying to do on-farm events of different types. And we're bumping up against zoning and Act 250 and, quite a few different regulations that some of us would like to change to allow this to go on. But we're getting further and further. Our representatives are further and further away from growing up on the farm, and they don't always understand that you constantly have to be changing things to survive. And so that's our, that's one of our issues that we need to work out here in Vermont.
Well, yeah, Senator Sanders is an early supporter of agritourism, some early earmarks in that. And there's quite a vibrant agritourism group. If you've met them maybe, or should be meeting with them soon.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of rocking it in a way. They're doing a really great job. They had an international workshop here in Burlington, 540 people, from 38 nations, hosted here in the state. So there's some good people doing really good work, and you could probably get some good advice from them.
Beth Kennett, we usually have Beth here, and from veggies to small animals to maple, but if you can get people to come here and to go visit the farm, got one place in Heartland on White River, the guy's got these small, tiny homes, and he rents them out for the weekend or whatever, and state laws. He was having to take spaghetti lots on his farm because they had to have 2 acres with each house. About as big as this room maybe. And so he had to go out and do this acreage, but we did get that fixed, and so we have some good things that happen, but we need a lot more to entice and help these people, because they're really clever on what they're doing and how they're doing it, and
let us know how we can support.
yeah.
Well,
So
thank you. We danced around the whole issue of it's really hard for anybody in, small agriculture is dying here as it's dying across the country. And the same trends, whether it's dairy or it's in, and part of that is in relationship and I support the purchase of development rights programs that, but now when in my area and when larger farmers are buying up land that is floodplain and now it's $3,000 to $5,000 an acre to do that, no young people can come up with a capital. We have to figure out a better way to support young people in small agriculture to move ahead. So anything that you guys can see to do that is important. You know, I see young people in my area that go to work for the bigger farmers but they can't get into agriculture themselves because the cost of production is still so high, even with the programs that we've got.
I think it's safe to say that one of the real problems with the loss of small farms and so forth is the loss of farm families.
Yeah.
And farm kids.
And the local economy suffers from that.
No, but even if you are a kid that knows how to, you can't get the capital to get in.
That's right.
Yeah. And even,
And then the market.
we thought 25, 30 years ago, you buy the development rights and they would be able to buy, and they can't. And so I think we have to think about other things we can do to help them get in.
Happy to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, I think there will be a relatively robust conversation around land access, both for that reason, for young farmers. You know, we see consolidation in the industry and everything is getting bigger and bigger. It makes it much harder to get in.
Yeah.
And then also like equity issues. We've had, Peter's been on a number of bills in the recent past, and some of this stuff is tied up in litigation at this point, but there's an intention within the Biden administration to provide access to land to young people in marginalized communities that have been prevented historically in like documented ways specifically by USDA from owning and farming land. And so it's certainly something that we're interested in supporting as we move forward here.
Now, I say it with no answers, but you know that.
Yeah.
What about, like a few years back, we talked about a community or an area-based digester, like in the Meadowy Valley. I think you were here then, Will. And we never got good traction on that. And the big reason, I think, was that the farmers got to chewing, arguing that I had better manure than you have. And how do I know I'm gonna get my good manure back to spread? But I think those days are gone. But the gas from our manure is still there. And if we could, my question is, I'm wondering is there any federal money to help build a digester, say, in the Meadowy Valley where farmers could take their manure, get it processed through that, make energy out of the gas, or even if it was designed so it sat near the gas lines that we have, they could take that gas and put it right into the gas line even, and not do electricity, but pump it in. Do you know if there's anywhere you can
I don't know about federal funds for exactly what you proposed, but there, there's a lot of support for methane on farm digesters. And the Goodrich farm down in Salisbury, I believe,
Yeah.
is pumping gas and just what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So with other food waste and other waste products, I think part of the issue, if I remember right, it was the transportation and the hauling and stuff that, they've done studies. I know years ago, they did a study, A&R did a study for municipal compost or decentralized compost facilities around the state. And I think they felt that 20 miles was the max in terms of transportation. So they needed lots of little satellite entities accepting food scraps for composting in order for, they couldn't be more than 20 miles away from the facility in order to be profitable. I'm sure the same would be true of Illinois.
of course, our farms are getting
I know,
spread out
that's-
more and more and more.
So that's why they have on-farm facilities.
But the little, for a small farm to do a small digester.
There's technology there where it can happen, small
It is,
anaerobic
so-
digesters.
Yeah,
Not necessarily to scale so they could tap into a gas line
pipe.
or
No,
even
but-
feed a generator, but for gas, I mean, for on-farm gas use or something like that. I've seen them, they exist, the technology exists.
Yeah, so that's there then. Yeah. Anything else from committee?
No, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No,
Thanks for all your work.
thank you for coming and, if you feel at any time you need something from us, feel free to contact us and, but don't forget, we're looking to you for big things.
You won't let us forget.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you
It
very
was
much.
Very,
Very
very
interesting.
nice, having you in, and David, it was nice, meeting you, and, good luck to you.
Thank you.
And say hi to Becca,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and again, vice versa, don't hesitate to reach out to us, I'm sure the same with these two, anytime.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Very good.
Over for our community center.
I don't. I know, exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, oh, it's great. It's great. It's great.
So, well, committee, we have the, John Rogers coming in at, 11:15, and I think Piper and,
Yeah.
we got the whole crew coming in on.
I got that. I'm gonna get a sport coat. Thanks.
Coming in on cannabis, next, so we got we're gonna get a real break. So.
Well, we deserve it. Come on.